Why people misunderstand the Stoics and pain. In this video, we will dissect one passage that the Stoic philosopher and Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote. Today, his passage concerning pain. Whenever you suffer pain, have ready to hand the thought that pain is not a moral evil and does not harm your governing intelligence. Pain can do no damage either to its rational or to its social nature. In most cases of pain, you should be helped by the saying of Epicurus. Pain is neither unendurable nor unending, as long as you remember its limits and do not exaggerate it in your imagination. Remember too that many things we find disagreeable are the unrecognised analogues of pain. Drowsiness, for example, oppressive heat, loss of appetite. So, when you find yourself complaining of any of these, say to yourself, you are giving in to pain. From Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. Have ready to hand the thought that pain is not a moral evil. The Stoics believed that anything which impacted virtue were the only things worth worrying about. If you still had your moral virtue, you were untouchable by evil. Pain, then, doesn't affect your morals, and so it isn't something that you should consider to be evil. We view pain in a distorted and subject manner then, because obviously it hurts. But often it is temporary, even in severe instances. Think of the pain of exercise being rewarded by the endorphins afterwards. We have a new appreciation for the normal state of being when we stop being in pain. But we also dance between pleasure, pain and neutrality. They are simply shifting states. Or, after a period of prolonged pain, we are more thankful for the normal status quo when we are no longer in pain. But really we just dance between pleasure, pain and neutrality. They are simply shifting states. Not harm your governing intelligence. Because rationality was considered to be closer to God or providence, there was a rationality infusing the universe according to the Stoics, which guided the elements that God needed to influence. So rational and irrational elements coexisted in their belief, but the irrational might simply be shaped by the rational elements, or even left to its own devices. Being closer to rationality was also considered to be closer to the natural order of things then. Hence, beliefs such as death being nothing to fear, because it was deemed natural and part of the order of the universe to the Stoics. Similarly, irrational elements do exist, but they did not necessarily need to be influenced directly by God or providence. The rational elements were sufficient, and would probably indirectly influence the irrational in whatever manner God needed. Pain is neither unendurable nor unending, as long as you remember its limits and do not exaggerate it in your imagination. Perception is often the driving force behind most human suffering. The Stoics often warned that our impressions can mislead us. Our impression of something can cause pain, regret, fear, and many other emotions, when a rational, objective interpretation would better serve us. People with ties and expectations feel bad because they don't meet them. Perfectionists are rarely happy because their self-worth is based upon difficult achievements, and they are always chasing that dream. People who crave possessions only allow themselves, once they have them, to be happy, yet find the feeling to be empty and fleeting often when they actually obtain it. When we think about how much pain we're in, we solidify its impact. We feel self-pity. We give strength to that pain. Our imagination has an adhesive, contributory force, melding together the physical and the mental to make it stronger. The accused coldness of Stoicism. View now the criticism that Stoics are cold and unfeeling. It's not a sensible criticism, because it disregards the presuppositions that the Stoics are making. That doesn't mean that you have to agree that we should all just accept pain and agree that virtue is the only true thing worth worrying about. But if one is to refute the Stoic beliefs, the presuppositions need to be refuted first, not mistakenly regarded as non-existent. If they feel no emotions, then why do they spend so much time warning against them and saying that we shouldn't just react emotionally to things? Is rationality superior to giving in to our feelings? Usually yes. When analysing something, we want to stay objective and look at the facts. One doesn't have to be Stoic to know this is true. Is it reasonable to say that if acting as a virtuous person is the only thing that matters, and pain does not impact this, then pain is not something to be worried about? Because this is the Stoic argument, and I think most people would agree that this logic follows. The Stoic belief in emotions does not mean that they didn't want anyone to feel anything, but they were saying that we should not just be led by emotions and react on the fly to them. Chronic pain. Emotionally, it's hard not to empathise with chronic pain. There is something about unending pain that casts it a level beyond temporary pain. With temporary pain, there is obviously respite, but chronic pain obfuscates in an obscure straight thinking. Is this where the Stoic coldness can be accurately related to then? Are they cold for not believing that chronic pain is terrible? It is natural for humans to feel empathy. In his book about chronic pain, Life is Hard, Kieran Setia says that many chronic pain sufferers are told to believe that it will end at some point, as a method for dealing with it. So are the Stoics disregarding such an attitude? Well, the presence of the oxymoronic Stoic terms of preferred indifference and dispreferred indifference, which were created by the Stoic philosopher Panaetius, suggests that the Stoics do acknowledge that, yes, of course there is intrinsic human empathy for pain of other humans, such as that of chronic pain sufferers. Dispreferred indifference relates to things that we would prefer not to happen, but that ultimately don't impact virtue, and so don't, in the grand philosophical scheme of things, matter. But intuitively, as compassionate human beings, we will naturally feel sympathy for those dispreferred indifference. Or the opposite, joy at preferred indifference, which, despite their status as things that are good, don't impact virtue. It is just that preferred indifference, or dispreferred indifference, do not set us forwards or backwards on our journey to living a virtuous life, which in the eyes of the Stoics is the only true good. So they believe that you can have empathy for those suffering, but that it doesn't impact virtue. Modern interpretations. It's true that Stoics had varying degrees of interpretation of this. It was a later introduction by Panaetius, and earlier, more hardline Stoics, such as Aristo, had a far more rigid interpretation of Stoic doctrine. But in the modern day, it seems sensible to accept with our understanding of psychology, instinct, and community that allowing for preferred and dispreferred indifference seems more realistic and reasonable. Notwithstanding that, there remains the argument that the Stoics believed that it was simply that we should not be led by our emotions, not that we should not feel at all, as people often misunderstand. This might take the form of, say, getting upset that somebody died, but avoiding stopping living our own life through grief, hard as that may be sometimes. Similarly, Stoic moderation is often misinterpreted as don't enjoy food and drink, when in reality it means show some moderation, don't become obsessed with food and drink to the point of it ruling your life and stopping you from living by your guiding reason. This is therefore a key distinction, which is often misquoted and misunderstood. In conclusion then, the misunderstanding of Stoicism as cold and unfeeling often stems from a misunderstanding of the background of Stoic cosmogony, determinism, and its conjoined relationship with ethics. Virtue is argued as the only true good, and although pain can be terrible, especially in the chronic sense, it does not impact virtue. Similarly, the Stoics were not unfeeling. In fact, their argument does not even make sense if that were true, because they wouldn't spend so much time arguing that we shouldn't focus on emotions if they didn't feel them. They warned of the dangers of being overwhelmed by things such as pain or loss. You can bear more than you think, especially when it does not impact your ability to be virtuous. We hope you've enjoyed this video on Stoics and pain. Here at Spartan Stoic Training, we provide a range of physical and mental programs of self-improvement, all for the cheap price of a single book. You might want to try it out, and it's a great way to support us. Check the link in the description, and we hope to see you there.